was never any quit. And if you know Philadelphia, you know the story of Rocky Balboa, obviously. And no matter what the odds were, he didn't quit. He kept fighting. And the nickname of Fighting Fields, we lived up to it.
World champions!
Man's only as good as his horses. For about 5 years, we had some good horses.
To get the full picture of how the 2008 Phillies came together, you have to go back a decade earlier to 1998, when recently hired general manager Ed Wade began to put a new mandate into practice.
The design was to get good and stay good. That was, Dave Montgomery's sort of catchphrase, but going all the way back to '98, that we wanted to build something that had a chance to sustain success for the long term. And at the same time, we knew that we had to be competitive at the big league level. I mean, this was the sort of the pre-tanking era, where you didn't do those types of things. You go back and look at Millwood and obviously Tomey, David Bell, Kenny Lofton, Billy Wagner. We were adding players, trying to make it happen sooner rather than later, and we were trading some young players in the process. But that core group, what turned out to be the core group, was just there was just too much substance to them to put us in a position to really be tempted to do something prematurely.
Not only did Ed Wade keep the Phillies' young core intact, he made one other crucial decision that paid dividends in 2008 and beyond. He hired former Indians skipper Charlie Manuel to manage the club prior to the 2005 season.
There were some outstanding candidates. Jim Leland's become a good friend, and Jim would have been a tremendous manager here in Philadelphia, but Charlie was the right guy at the right time for us.
That summer, I'd been through the minor leagues, and I saw Utley, I saw Howard, I saw Matson, I saw Cole Hamels. I thought they were going to be big league players. I felt like we were a year or 2, 3 years away or whatever.
Unfortunately for Ed Wade, Charlie Manuel's first season at the helm ended in the same fashion as the previous 11, with the Phillies out of the playoffs, despite a second-half surge from Rookie of the Year Ryan Howard. Had the second wild card spot existed back then, the Phillies would have made the playoffs, and history may have played out differently. But instead, Wade was fired after the 2005 season, and a new GM came on board with a plan to turn the Phillies' young, talented core into champions. Pat Gillick arrived in Philadelphia with a track record of success at every stop in his career, and he recognized that something special was brewing.
Ed Wade and his group had really assembled a good group of a good nucleus here. I thought they had the potential with a few pieces here and a few pieces there, to really be competitive. And when you have the type of nucleus that Ed left here, it just don't make too many mistakes. Just don't do something stupid.
Gillick's first move was a blockbuster. Less than a month into his tenure as Phillies GM, he traded future Hall of Famer Jim Tomey to the White Sox, freeing up first base for Ryan Howard.
We saw tremendous potential in Ryan. Jim had a tremendous career, but probably was toward the tail end of his career, and so we felt that we had to go with somebody who was homegrown in Ryan Howard.
I'm coming up, and I'm replacing a first ballot Hall of Famer on a team right now who's got a chance at trying to make the playoffs. The first thing I told myself was, I'm not Jim Tomey. I'm not going to try to be Jim Tomey. All I can do is just be me, and the best version of me is hopefully that's going to be enough.
Gillick was just getting started. He shipped out another All-Star during the 2006 season, trading Bobby Abreu to the Yankees and opening up a starting spot in the outfield for Shane Victorino. Gillick continued tinkering with the roster. He added a pair of players he had some history with, trading for Jamie Moyer, who he knew from Seattle, and signing Jason Worth, who he drafted in Baltimore. The move to acquire Moyer generated its share of questions, namely, why trade for a 43-year-old starting pitcher?
I always said, I don't like pitchers who throw average. To me, they either have to throw way above average or way below average. He was a way below average guy. So if you're going to disrupt somebody's timing, you better be one or the other, either above average or below. And he had the feel, and he had the instinct and the preparedness before a game.
I just had a conversation about retiring and get a phone call and said, hey, would you be interested in moving to Philadelphia and playing with the Phillies? And I went, yeah, why not?
Moyer was established, but Worth was still trying to prove himself following an injury-plagued start to his career. He had a supporter in Gillick, but manager Charlie Manuel took some convincing.
You know, me and Charlie had a bunch of discussions about playing time. He really didn't want to play me. So finally, I just went in there, and somehow I obtained my 04 highlight tape from the Dodgers. So I just flipped it on his desk. I said, hey, watch this if you want or not, and just walked out. And I think it took like 2 or 3 days for him to actually watch it. And then I'm passing, he tapped me. He was like, hey. He's like, I remember you from LA, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't until he watched that tape, and I think that kind of changed his perception a little bit on me.
With Gillick's new additions in tow, the Phillies optimistically looked forward to the 2007 season. But Jimmy Rollins was more than optimistic. He was confident, and he decided that it was time for the Phillies to stake their claim in the National League East.
I think we ought to team to beat the NL East, finally. I really believe that with all my heart. We had made a couple moves that I thought needed to be made. For me, that was just what I needed to make that claim, and it was literally, a statement, saying like it's our time. Yeah, we're the team to beat in the East. In the end, I think it fueled everyone. We understood that we're in this together. Although I came out and said we're the team to beat, I said we're the team to beat, and we understood that.
Jimmy was the catalyst. We knew he put himself out there on the island by doing it, because I think, the Mets had been kind of that team in the division, previously. And, the squad that they had. And we were like, we got you, dude. Like, we weren't gonna let him be out there on that island by himself. And when he showed that vote of confidence in us, we had to put it back into him. And we just went out there and made it happen.
Rollins backed up his words with an MVP season, and his teammates followed. They ran down the defending champion Mets with a September surge to the finish line, overcoming a 7-game deficit with 17 games to play, clinching their first division title in 14 years on the final day of the season.
The last few weeks of that 07 season were pretty surreal. Obviously, the Mets didn't play very good baseball at all, and we kind of turned it up a notch a bit. And I think it goes back to show it got us prepared for the following years. The intensity, the environment that we were in, the must-win games, if you will. And I think it got us comfortable to play in that type of environment, and I think that set us up for some success later on.
The Phillies were swept out of the 2007 postseason by the red-hot Rockies, who went on to represent the National League in the World Series. But that taste of October baseball only made the Phillies hungrier in 2008.
I think 2007 really set up 2008 because of the way it ended. We got to the playoffs, we were extremely ecstatic, happy as all get out about playing, and then we kind of, I think that going 3 and out was just, really left us with a bitter taste in the mouth.
I don't know that I've ever been in a clubhouse during my career where I saw as many players down, upset, hurt, beaten after that 2007 series.
I think it put a lot of it in perspective for us. We made it, yay, we're home. Whoa, that's not what we were expecting. So we came into the next year, 2008, even more focused. The team to beat thing was out the way. Now everyone believes it. Now, you know what? We are good. We are a playoff team. Coming into the season, we know. We're not hoping, we're not thinking, we're not proclaiming, we are.
That instilled that kind of confidence and that belief in us as a whole. And we knew we were all coming back. And I think that does help, is when you kind of know every guy's coming back and we're going to put a few pieces in there, that right there just gives you the edge.
I believe that, in a sense, that run we made in 07 really set up this team for the next 5 years.
Big things were in store for the Phillies in 2008, but not before the general manager made yet another move to bolster the roster. This one coming in the form of a perfect addition to the back end of the bullpen.
World Champions, the story of the 08 Phillies, presented by your local tri-state Toyota dealers.
After getting a taste of the postseason in 2007, the Phillies were eager to take the next step in 2008. Before they could do so, GM Pat Gillick still had some tinkering to do to his roster. And at the general manager's meetings in November, Gillick pulled the trigger on a trade to acquire closer Brad Lidge from the Astros.
I was convinced by Charlie Kerfel. Charlie Kerfel was our major league scout that was in one of the clubs that he was assigned was Houston. And he thought that Lidge was the guy that we needed to put us over the hump.
Well, we thought he still had the good stuff. And it was like one of those situations that he went through such a tough period when, you know, he let up that big home run. I guess it was Albert Pujols and what have you. I think it was one of those, this would be a good guy to take a shot on because a change of scenery might really do him well.
I didn't realize how important the change of scenery would be. Playing outdoors instead of inside in the dome, the fans as passionate as they were, it gave me kind of a second wind, but also a little bit added, I don't know, adrenaline or something that kind of made me feel more comfortable and more excited to pitch than I'd felt in a long time.
As with any trade, it takes two sides to make a deal. And a familiar face was at the other end of the Lidge trade, Ed Wade, who had just been hired as Astros general manager 2 months earlier.
People think I did it because of my Philly background, and nothing could be further from the truth. And I actually tell people what I think is an interesting story about the trade. There were two clubs that were interested in Brad Lidge at that point in time, obviously Philadelphia. And the other club had a pitcher, big league pitcher, who had really struggled the previous year, had spent time at AAA, and that club had interest in him as well. If we had made the trade with that club, the Astros would have acquired Cliff Lee from Cleveland, which means Philadelphia may never have gotten Cliff Lee, and they would not have ever gotten Brad Lidge.
Trading for Lidge meant Brett Myers would be returning to the starting rotation. And after getting comfortable as the closer in 2007, Myers wasn't thrilled with the move.
I mean, I was upset because I thought I found a new spot. I was really having fun closing because that gave me a chance to play every night. I was the guy that couldn't sit still on the bench, man. I'd get up in the clubhouse, back to the clubhouse, just to try to, I don't know, I was an antsy type of guy, and I was upset about it.
Myers wasn't happy, but the team came first, and the Phillies arrived in Clearwater for spring training in February 2008 with a singular focus, taking care of their unfinished business from '07.
I can tell you this, when I walked in the clubhouse in 2008 in spring training, there was a totally different air. You know, spring training, there can be a lot of downtime and ease time and just kind of hanging out kind of stuff. It was very workmanlike. Nobody talked about it either. You kind of got the sense that, you know what, I've got something to show.
I remember having a conversation with with Jimmy in outfield. And we were just kind of talking. It was like, dude, like, why can't we go out there and go win a World Series? Like, we could do it. Because we had the experience to where nobody expected us to do what we did in '07. And it's like, now we understand, we know, what it's like being in the playoffs. We can go out there and win this thing.
The Phillies were battling with the Mets for first place in the NL East as the trade deadline approached in July. And Gillick seized an opportunity to improve his starting rotation, acquiring Joe Blanton from Oakland.
It's the old adage, you don't ever have enough pitching. And Blanton was a very durable pitcher, a guy that went to the post every day. And so we just felt that to secure our situation, that we needed someone.
Gillick wasn't done wheeling and dealing. In late August, he added a bat for the bench, acquiring veteran Matt Stairs from the Blue Jays.
I was traded on a Thursday night, but it was a waiver trade. They couldn't tell me where I was going. And then I said, well, if I can guess where I'm going, will you tell me? And I said, yes. I said, the Phillies. And I said, how the hell did you know that? I said, well, Pat Gillick's been after me for a few years, so when I found out I was going to Philadelphia, I was pretty happy.
Stairs arrived just in time for the Phillies to make a September surge for the second straight year. They entered the month 1 game behind the Mets, but then the Phillies stepped on the gas, going 17-8 in September, passing the Mets in the standings yet again, and clinching the division title in the second-to-last game of the season in dramatic fashion.
Ground ball up the middle, J-Roll dives, the only one, The Phillies are the National League Eastern Division champions.
It was a symbolic clinching play. The team's heart and soul, Rollins and Utley, turning a picture-perfect double play and preserving Lidge's perfect season.
After knowing what happened, in Houston, him coming over here, that was important for me, for his confidence, for us, but really for his confidence that going in, he didn't blow a save all season long. Going into the playoffs, he can ride that.
The division-clinching double play turned by Jimmy Rollins and Chase Utley on the next-to-last day of the 2008 season was crucial for two reasons. It sent the Phillies to the postseason for the second straight year, but it also meant that Cole Hamels would not have to start on the final day of the season, allowing the emerging ace to be rested and ready for Game 1 of the division series.
You know, the backbone of our rotation. At that time, he was completely unhittable. He was still young. Guys didn't know really what to expect from him, and he was completely dominant.
I had the belief that I knew my teammates were going to put up runs. I just had to then go out there and prevent runs. And when you start doing that game after game, you then start to get that momentum, and you definitely get in the zone a lot quicker.
Hamels kept rolling in Game 1 of the division series against the Brewers, pitching 8 scoreless innings in a 3-1 Phillies win. That left the Game 2 start to Brett Myers, who fought his way back to the majors after being sent down to the minor leagues on July 1st. He faced off against Brewers ace CC Sabathia, who went 11-2 down the stretch to lift Milwaukee into the postseason.
CC, you know, he's a guy that hasn't really ever got rattled too much in his career.
I mean, and at that time, CC was immortal.
You know, Brett, for years, always claimed he was a good hitter. And the 134 average can attest to that.
Well, Myers makes contact.
There was a few swings that did not look good at all.
I look back at it now and I'm going, what in the heck was going on?
The crowd started getting into it.
And I still can remember the chills of the crowd getting louder and louder each pitch.
I don't know. He was just throwing the ball up there and I was just trying to fight. I was in a fight with him.
He was just fighting. But I think that was the mentality of our team.
I wanted to do everything I could to win that game because that was their best. And I needed to beat him. I needed to do anything I could.
He fought and he gritted and how do I follow that? You know, how do I not go up there and give up? I cannot.
Swinging a drive down the left field line. Ron going back. He looks up and it is gone! Grand slam victorino!
It's the little things like a bat that might have tired CC for him to miss and I execute on a bad pitch. I mean, those are all the kind of things that make that moment happen. I don't have a teammate that battles to draw a walk. I don't get to be in that moment.
When you hit a grand slam off CC, you know, one of the best pitchers in the game of our generation, that right there, you just know that it was meant to be. We're going to win this series.
After closing out the Brewers in 4 games, the Phillies reached the NLCS for the first time since a beloved band of misfits got there back in 1993. Once again, Hamels pitched the Phils to a series lead in Game 1 against the Dodgers. But prior to Game 2, Charlie Manuel learned that his mother, June, had passed away. After traveling home to Virginia for the funeral, the skipper was back in the dugout when the series resumed.
The last time I talked to my mother, you know, like she told me to pray for her, but at the same time, and I told her, I said, I will. And she says, Charles Jr., you're gonna win those games. Said, you go into the World Series. And she said, I'm praying for you. And that's the last thing she says to me. I mean it, really. I did exactly what my mother would have wanted me to do, and because, you know, like I was very close to her, and I spent a lot of time with her when she was alive, and I think it, you know, like I think that helped me knowing who my mother was and basically what she would want me to do, and she would have wanted me to you know, like to definitely, you know, not miss any time in managing the Phillies, and I totally believe that.
Obviously, anytime you're in that situation, you want to win, but I think that kind of gave us a little bit more motivation to win because we all loved Charlie, and for him to go through that at that time, we felt for him and we definitely wanted to win for him. So I think that motivated us a little bit more.
Manuel's Phillies took a 2-1 series lead into Game 4 at Dodger Stadium, but trailed that game 5-3 heading into the 8th inning. Then Shane Victorino came up clutch again, lacing a game-tying 2-run homer off Corey Wade into the right field stands. 2 batters later, Carlos Ruiz kept the inning going with a 2-out single. After Chooch's hit, Dodgers manager Joe Torre decided to go to his closer, Jonathan Broxton. Charlie Manuel was ready with the counter move.
When they brought in Broxton, and we got down and we need a pinch hitter, I think of myself, Matt Stairs, he's a good fastball hitter.
My whole career, I just thought about hitting the ball hard, and people talk about try to hit the ball hard or try to hit it far. I kind of thought about hitting it far, especially in the pinch hit role, because I knew it was the one swing could turn the outcome of a game, and that day it did.
Stairs rips one into the night, deep into right, way out of here.
It was literally a moonshot. It went so high and so far.
I just remember seeing Stairsy take the swing, and I saw the ball shoot up in the air. And I was literally like, that ball's gonna leave the entire stadium.
I saw it fly really close over my head in that bullpen out in LA, and I'll tell you what, we were screaming so loud in that little room down there.
When I barreled it, my first thought was, do not trip running the bases.
When he hit it, you could hear every one of us scream, and the crowd just died.
Everybody just erupted. I remember just jumping and jumping and jumping.
And we were fist pumping and screaming and high-fiving each other.
And then, of course, you come across home plate and you see, Chooch and Worth and all those guys, Jenkins going crazy in the dugout, and the goosebumps start kicking in.
I mean, the effect that it had on that team and us, the ball might as well have went out the stadium. I mean, it absolutely demolished them and picked us up.
And I think it just kind of set the tone. Like, no matter what the scores were, we still had dangerous guys, and we just felt somewhat invincible at that point. Not to be cocky or arrogant about it, but a confidence that we were going to get the job done.
And at that moment was the moment when I thought, oh my God, I think we're going to win the World Series. Because everything had just absolutely come together.
But it was awesome because Stairsy would tell you, he's like, when I step in the box, man, I'm trying to do one thing only. That's trying to leave the yard. I was like, well, you did just that, my friend. You did just that.
The Phillies cruised to a Game 5 victory in Los Angeles, and the fans of Philadelphia celebrated a trip to the World Series right along with them. But there was one more party left to go. After dispatching the Dodgers in 5 games in the NLCS, the Phillies were forced to play the waiting game, watching as the Rays and Red Sox stage a 7-game battle in the ALCS. As fate would have it, Tampa Bay was the opponent, and the Phillies began the World Series at their home away from home.
All the fans are down in Clearwater. They're going to be coming, and I remember walking into the stadium and coming out going, whoa, there is a lot of fans from our dugout above, and I mean, basically they all were down. I mean, they basically were, it was a sea of red. And I was like, man, how are we not confident going into this game?
3 batters into the franchise's first World Series in 15 years, Chase Utley got the Phillies started with a bang.
Utley rips one into right field at the track at the wall. It's a good start for the Phillies.
Having some success that first at bat kind of pushed us in the right direction, I think. For me, it relaxed me a little bit. I would imagine it relaxed everybody else, kind of let us go and play our game.
Utley's home run sparked the Phillies to a Game 1 win. But the series returned to Philadelphia tied at 1, with the Phillies 3 home wins away from a championship. At age 45 and in his 22nd Major League season, Jamie Moyer prepared to take the mound for his World Series debut.
That particular night, I gave myself permission to just, you know what, for one time in my life, one time in my career, just to really feel, to take in the environment.
Moyer allowed 3 runs in 6 1/3 innings in his World Series debut, but he was a nervous spectator as the game entered the bottom of the 9th inning, tied at 4. Carlos Ruiz had already homered earlier in the game, but he didn't need quite the same exit velocity when he stepped to the plate with the bases loaded and nobody out.
Swing and a chopper towards third, charging Longoria, bare hand pick, flipped over to the catcher. Brentland scores, game over, Phils win game 3.
Ruiz's game winner gave the Phils a 2-1 series lead. One night later, an even more unlikely hero helped the Phils to the brink of a championship.
It is out of here. Pitcher Joe Plant.
Honestly, it's kind of a blur a little bit because that's not really an ideal situation. That's not really what, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but the focus was the pitch. Because if, get too much adrenaline, focusing too much on what just happened, I'm going to go out and, blow the lead, then that's kind of all for naught. So it's almost like I didn't really get to enjoy the moment as it was happening, but, afterwards I definitely did.
The Phillies were now just 1 win away from the 2nd World Series title in franchise history. But if they wanted to celebrate with their fans at Citizens Bank Park, they'd have to win Game 5. Games 6 and 7, if necessary, would be played on the Rays' home turf, and the Phillies wanted no parts of returning to Florida.
I don't think anyone packed their bag. For what? If we lose, then we'll go home and pack. We'll figure it out from there, but I'm not bringing them back, so I'm not planning on losing. And to a man, we all had that feeling. I think a few of us talked about it. Bringing it back for what? What's the point? I don't plan on losing.
The Phillies sent their ace to the mound for Game 5 on Monday, October 27th, intent on making history. But as she often does, Mother Nature had other ideas.
I think we kind of had an understanding that rain was coming. We didn't know how bad, and it just kept getting heavier and heavier and harder. I mean, we were playing in puddles of water.
I mean, the field was a total disaster.
The field was like playing on a lake, a shallow lake.
I don't know how Cole was able to hold on to the ball, like, honestly, because he would throw it to me and I wanted to like run it back to him. So I'm like, I don't know how you pitching right now, dude.
There was only about one pitch I could throw, which was a fastball. So it was just trying to get the best grip and just trying to hit my spots.
Running off the field, the second umpire that's down the line, I was like, why are we still playing? And he said, I think the field's really holding up. And I'm like, there's like an inch of water everywhere, and there's like 3 inches in some places. It was a nightmare.
The conditions finally wreaked havoc in the top of the 6th inning. With 2 outs, Jimmy Rollins was unable to grip the wet baseball on a B.J. Upton grounder. The Rays tied the score at 2 before the game was stopped in the middle of the 6th, and a fan base starving for a championship was forced to wait a little bit longer.
A little disappointed. We just want this game to get resumed as soon as possible. I think they should be playing in the rain. We're in Philadelphia. This is our town. We want to win this thing tonight.
When they called that game at night, I was upset about that because I felt like that might have been an advantage for the Rays because, like the ball was, if you hit the ball, like it's hard to move, it's hard to field it, and also it's hard for Hamels to grip it and things like that. And they got to hit in their inning. We did, and I was kind of, I was a little upset at that.
I would not have allowed a World Series to end this way. We'll stay here if we have to celebrate Thanksgiving here. We'll stay here.
The Phillies didn't have to wait until Thanksgiving. They just had to wait 2 days. But while 48 hours may have felt like an eternity to the fans, the players were strangely calm, even with a championship nearly in their grasp.
The game literally paused. It was literally just on pause. Now for the fans and media, obviously, it gives you a lot to talk about, all these different scenarios, and it makes it fun. And those things that fans do, just like, it's been since 1980, can we just... For us, it was like, the game just paused.
I went home. My wife and I binge watched True Blood. I've probably watched 8 to 10 episodes, and that kind of made the time fly.
Game 5 finally resumed on Wednesday night, October 29th, and with the championship hanging in the balance, Citizens Bank Park was bursting at the seams with anticipation.
The fans, I can't say enough about how great the fans were. They were so loud, so intense, so intimidating.
It was bottled energy, pent up energy, ready to come out.
It's the do or die moment, and everybody's into it. I don't think any fan was, sitting on their seats.
Play picked back up in the bottom of the 6th inning with the pitcher spot leading off for the Phillies. Charlie Manuel had 2 days to think about who he would pinch hit against Rays reliever Graham Balfour, and Charlie was confident in his decision.
I sent up Jeff Jenkins, and the reason I did because he's a fastball hitter, a low ball hitter. He's a dead low ball hitter, and I thought to myself, like the guy pitching he's going to try to get ahead, and he's going to try to establish his fastball, and he's going to be throwing some fastballs, and hopefully he'll get some balls down low, and Jenkins get a hit or get on base or whatever.
Swing and a drive. Noel hit right center field on the run. Ball down. He looks up and it is off the base of the wall.
Jeff Jenkins comes out and and I'm going, wow. I said, it's on. Like, these boys come to play. It gives me chills about it still to this day, and just the fact that we could just flip that switch and it just happened.
Jenkins scored on a Jason Worth RBI single to give the Phillies a 3-2 lead, but Tampa Bay tied it in the top of the 7th, and the Rays were threatening for more, setting the stage for the signature defensive play of Chase Utley's career.
Long run for Utley, and he backhands, flip no, he'll hold on to it. The runner's trying to score, the throw home, the tag, yes!
It felt like forever for me to get to the ball, and it was freezing outside. And I just remember thinking, this play is not an ideal play. Maybe if I make a perfect throw, maybe he's out. But the chance of making a perfect throw at that point wasn't as important as keeping that runner at third base. And so I faked it, and he kept going, and Chooch made a good tag.
We've played so much together, it was like we were almost one. Like, he faked the throw, and I'm yelling home as he's throwing. It was like we both had the same thing in mind.
I was running in thinking that I might have to go pick up this ball and actually make a throw home. All of a sudden, I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's doing a spin. All of a sudden, he's faking. And all of a sudden, I see the ball come out of his hand to home. I'm like, oh my God, he's got him.
But then I'm like, damn, I can't believe he actually threw it.
I said to myself, look at Chase. This is why you sit and understand what the guy goes through and why he does what he does.
Here you go, one of the greatest plays, I mean, definitely in Philadelphia Phillies history, period. It was great, and that saved a run, a big run.
Utley's heroics kept the game tied, and Pat Burrell doubled to lead off at the bottom of the 7th, delivering what turned out to be his final hit as a Philly. Eric Bruntlett pinch ran for Burrell and scored on a Pedro Feliz RBI single, giving the Phillies a 4-3 lead they would carry into the top of the 9th, setting up Brad Lidge for one last save opportunity. The Rays had the tying run on second with 2 outs, and pinch hitter Eric Hinsky at the plate.
I'd faced Hinsky just a couple times before then, but he had gotten hits on my fastball and he'd hit it well. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. We were going to go to the slider, and we were going to keep going to the slider. And that's when Carlos was like, all right, I don't need to, even put down a finger. You know what you're going to throw. And then finally on that last pitch, I remember, coming set and gripping that ball in my glove. And for some reason, the tack on the ball, whatever it was, the seams in my fingers, I was like, oh, this is going to be a good one. Like, I kind of knew on that particular pitch I was going to have my best slider, and fortunately it was.
The 0-2 pitch, swing and a miss, struck him out. The Philadelphia Phillies are 2008 World Champions of Baseball.
It's impossible to describe. I mean, it's a childhood dream. The joy, it's like your head just pops. I mean, I went down to my knees. I don't even know what I was saying. Jason Worth, I remember saying, he's like, you were speaking in tongues at that point. He's like, I don't know. Watching on the video, I don't know what I was saying. Something along the lines of, oh my God, we just won the World Series. But before I knew it, Chooch and I are embracing, and I'm on the bottom of about 25, 200-pound dudes.
It was very euphoric. It was very euphoric. And I just remember being like, I'm going to be the first one in there. And I'm tackling. I'm just like, I'm taking them both down.
And it was just a total melee after that. I remember thinking about jumping on the pile and then saying probably not a good idea. And then someone clotheslined me and I fell down. And Jenkins is shaking my head. It was awesome.
I felt like I was sprinting as fast as I could, going nowhere. But because of the excitement, and I think it was more just the fact that I was taking everything in from center field and everything was coming this way, and everything was going to come, and you live for that moment. And as I got closer to the pile, I was like, this is that moment where you dream of jumping on it.
It was heavy. It was heavy being at the bottom of the pile. Not at the very bottom. I think Brad and Ryan were at the very bottom. I had a little cushion between that.
I remember being at the bottom of the pile, still screaming. I had so much adrenaline and excitement. I couldn't breathe. My foot was next to my face somehow. But I was still so excited. I was still screaming, for joy at the bottom of that pile.
It was heavy. Yeah, I was like, I made a mistake. I was like, you do not want to be on the bottom of the pile.
I was so desperate to hug somebody. And I kind of looked over at the pile of players, and I realized that if I jumped on top of them, they were probably not going to be terribly happy with me. And I looked around at the coaches, and they didn't seem particularly receptive to either. So the Fanatic was my next best option, and I took advantage of it. I figured he'd catch me. Wasn't going to let me fall.
We play in a tough-ass town to play in, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud to say I play here.
We partying all night. I don't know if I'm going to sleep. You see that? Champs, baby. 2008.
I don't think anybody in here understands the way the city and the people think more than I do. And to be able to hand this over to them, it's as good as it gets.
Smile. Philadelphia, smile. This is your championship. 25 years you waited. Some of you weren't even born, but 25 years you waited. Go back to Broad Street, pop champagne, get crazy. Do your thing, baby. This for you. Right here, baby.
It was a feeling of accomplishment, like we did it, it's done. you know, we're World Series champs. No one can tell us we're not.
You know, it's the ultimate high that you can be on. At that given moment, it's knowing that what you set out to do, you actually accomplished.
You just want to enjoy it. You want guys around you to enjoy it. At that point, obviously, I'm excited for myself, but you know, I'm more excited for my teammates and the coaching staff and just everyone that had a part in us winning.
As a kid that plays baseball, like, this is what you dream of. And just to see, like, the joy, see the laughter and the tears, all of it, like all the emotions from like fans as you're running around, it was awesome, man. It was pretty cool.
All the cliches you can think of, you know, like what you play for since you were a kid, like all the things that you've ever wanted, all your dreams have come true, like utter elation. Like you don't, I mean, words can't describe, you know. That was quite a moment.
Yes, I'd love to win another World Series, but there is no place in this world that I would rather win a World Series than Philadelphia. It was something that I'd like to go back to and actually relive it just so I can soak it in a little bit more.
I mean, they showed up all over the place for it tonight, and
I wouldn't take that away for nothing. To win it in this city as long as they were starving for a world championship from any team, and I was just happy that we were able to give it to them.
As the party raged on, the Phillies manager delivered a special message to the fans.
Hey, listen, this is for Philadelphia. This is for our fans. Hey, and when I look around here, who's the world champions?
Because we hadn't won for a long time, and everybody was talking about how we needed to bring a World Series to Philadelphia, and also how, you know, like if you win a World Series, you know, like that's going to really fire the city up in the state, and it's going to, and they're starving for a winner. And I think that goes to show you, you know, like how important it is, you know, like to get a championship.
2 days after celebrating with the sellout crowd at Citizens Bank Park, the Phillies expanded the guest list just a bit for the city's first championship parade in a quarter century. Fittingly, Pat Burrell led the way, along with his four-legged friend Elvis.
Well, trying to get that dog up on that wagon wasn't easy. Thank God there was some fire. I think there were some firemen there that were helping. When we got to Market and we went around, you know, City Hall there, and we got onto Broad Street, and then once we turned the corner to Broad Street, that's when the sea of red opened up, and you know, you could see, you know, all the way down Broad Street, and you know, you couldn't see any pavement or any sidewalk. I mean, there was people hanging out of buildings, on top of buildings, climbing on top of light poles, telephone booths, cars. You know, I was fortunate because I was the first one to see all that, so it's a great memory just to, I remember turning that corner and just being taken back by the whole thing.
We didn't really know what to anticipate. We knew we were going down Broad Street. We heard that there's going to be a lot of people, but for me, I didn't realize the magnitude of the amount of people that were going to come out and support us. It was surreal. It was just a sea of red all the way down Broad Street, people hanging out of windows, and it was just the love that we felt during that parade was unbelievable.
I didn't realize how important the parade was until I was actually in it. It was just an unbelievable, magical day. But to see the fans really embrace it all and take it in, you know, as we converged up around the top end of town and came down around Billy Penn, and when you get onto Broad Street, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's just a sea of people.
When the parade reached its conclusion at Citizens Bank Park, the players took their turns on the mic, but one speech would be remembered above the rest.
He does it day in and day out. Phillies second baseman, Chase Utley.
Everyone was making a speech, which I hate to do, but I said, sure, I'll do it. Didn't really know what to say.
World champions. World champions.
You know, in my mind, I was like, is that That can't be edited, can it? Like, it's a live audience.
Like, did you think he was going to say it? No. But are you surprised that he said it? No. Because you'd have to know Chase.
I think for the first time, you know, although it came out as in, you know, world blank champs, everybody's like, oh, this is the real Chase. It's like, yeah. Like he's not a robot. You know, he's not a loony, he's not psycho, he's a funny dude.
That was like the mantra of our team. That was how our team was. Like we were grinders. We went out there, we did what we needed to do. I mean, so for the Chase to say it and put it that way, it's like, yes.
It came out, I meant it. Some people didn't like it. Sorry. But it happened, and I'll live with it.
The politically correct thing to do is apologize, but that's what he was feeling at the time. And now you look at, you know, the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. What Chase said doesn't seem too bad anymore, does it?
The parade down Broad Street was the culmination of a plan many years in the making. It all came together for the 2008 Phillies, the perfect blend of talent and clubhouse chemistry, the right players at the right time.
All these guys were coming to the prime of their career. They were all superstars, but nobody was kind of elevating themselves above the team. It's a kind of an interesting dynamic to have. You don't typically have that arrangement going on in a clubhouse, but everybody remained confident and humble.
We were so gelled. It seemed like a high school team. You know, it wasn't, when I first got to the big leagues, it felt very individual. It felt very, you know, but by the time, you know, 2006, 7 rolled around, I could tell the guys, we were really getting along together. We all had the same goals.
Clearly we had a lot of talent up and down our lineup, pitching staff, we played solid defense. But I think in order to win, you need a little bit more than that. You need to have that grit. You need to have just things go your way. And we created a lot of that positive energy.
That's what it's about. It's about team. It wasn't about who the best pitcher was, the highest rank. I mean, because our pitching staff was nothing compared to what they had with Halladay, Oswalt, Hamels, you know, Blanton, and Lee. There was nothing like that. And I just think that we played for each other, and I think that's what kind of made that team good. Charlie brought all that together, though. It wasn't us. We did it. We played for that guy. We played for that man.
The 2008 World Series title served as the ultimate validation for Charlie Manuel, whose decades of experience in the game trumped the critics who didn't like the way he talked or thought he wasn't the right fit for Philadelphia.
I think there were some very offensive things said about Charlie because he didn't talk with a Philadelphia accent, because he wasn't the most polished one-on-one interview guy, so on and so forth. But that's not what we hired Charlie to be. I've got to tell you that to see Charlie treated the way he's treated today, knowing how he was treated when he first came on board, it's certainly refreshing. I think Charlie gets more than the last laugh on this whole thing because he's become a Philadelphia icon, which is, you know, certainly what he deserves to be at this point in time.
Always lift you up. If you had a bad game, he'd walk by, pat you on the shoulder, say, hey, it's okay, son. Get him tomorrow. Get him tomorrow. You know, it'll happen. Great communicator, always made you feel good to where, you know, you want to literally run out there and go run through a wall for him.
Oh, he always made you laugh. Sometimes he'd kick your ass and then make you laugh on the way out. Trust me. And it was automatic respect from Charlie. When you have a guy that's genuinely nice, genuinely has a good heart, you feel genuinely has, you know, his players' best interests at heart, it's easy to go play for a guy like that.
You know, like I felt like it was a good time for me, you know, like, hey, look, I'm gonna get noticed, I'm gonna get attention, but at the same time, hey, look, they are the ones that put it into operation, you know, like that, and actually took care of the game and everything as far as executing and winning, and you know, like they are the important things. Man's only as good as his horses, and I'll tell you something. For about five years, we had some good horses.
The years that followed that magical 2008 season brought 3 more division titles and another National League crown. But as Phillies fans know all too well, 2008 was the only season that ended with a parade down Broad Street. Looking back a decade later, that fact still haunts Charlie Manuel.
I think we could have won more. I think we had the chance to win a couple more, you know, and we just didn't do it. Does it depress you? Yeah, and it'll always stay with you. I mean, you know, like those games definitely, I remember them just like every yesterday, but at the same time too, I look up sometime and I say, you know what, that's baseball.
We should have had at least, I mean, it's hard to say you should have at least these many World Series titles, but for sure 2, possible 3, but for sure 2. I mean, that there was no way out of that 5-year run that we couldn't have had 2 World Series and at least 3 to 4 appearances. But it just didn't work out. That's sports. That's sports.
I think as we watch, when teams go to the postseason, you start to see where there's a little bit more edge, and you start to see kind of where luck falls, and that's what really happens. And I think that's kind of what in the next couple of years, even though we had the best team on paper and the matchups looked the best, it sometimes didn't come out that way.
Luck, you know, things falling in place and things happening your way. I don't know. I mean, I can't really put a finger on why we won in 08 and why we didn't in some of the other years. On paper, you can say some of the other years we had way better talent. But hey, I got it in 08. That's all I worried about, you know. I wish I had more, believe me.
You never want to look back and say, what if? We had an opportunity in 2009. But again, it's baseball. You need talent, you need a little bit of mojo, and we had that. We just couldn't get over the hump with the Yankees. The Yankees obviously had an extremely talented team, but we should all keep our heads high and be proud of what we accomplished.
The stretch of 5 straight NL East titles from 2007 through 2011 is the longest in franchise history, largely thanks to a core of young players who were the pillars of that unprecedented run of success.
I've always believed that if you're going to be successful for a long period of time, you have to have homegrown talent. You know, and we had at that club, we had Howard, Nutley, and Rollins and Burrell, you know, Cole Hamels, all guys that were in this organization. And then those pieces we added the right pieces.
When you think about it, arguably the best first baseman, second baseman, and shortstop, and maybe one of the best starting pitchers they've ever developed, ever. So at the same time, really coming to their prime at the same time, which is pretty extraordinary. It doesn't happen all that often, but it was great when it did.
The fans fell in love with those iconic players, packing Citizens Bank Park for a 257-game sellout streak from July of 2009 through August of 2012. It was a magical moment in time.
When you went out there, that energy just pushed you. And you know the other team felt it. Like, you go shake their hands, you know, go say what's up to them, and they're out there like, man, like, yeah, this is us, dog. And y'all got to play in it.
I'd talk to guys from other teams, and it was just like, bro, it was so hard coming to Philly to come play. Like 3 games, it's like, oh, the Phillies are on the schedule. Where do we go next? You not only had to deal with us, but you had to deal with 45,000 people.
Like, you felt bigger than you were. You felt like this was a stage. You know, New York is a stage. Boston is a stage. Philly had become a stage, and you knew it. So when you went out there, you performed as if you were on a stage because you had a whole bunch of, you know, hungry fans wanting to be entertained, and you better do your job. And you better win.
I feel like we played the game the right way. We played with intensity. We didn't play scared. We didn't back down. And I think the fans recognized the type of guys we had. I think the grit, the intensity, the passion that we showed for the game, I think, and clearly winning, really brought the fans out.
I mean, you look at some of the players that they had before. I mean, you have Mike Schmidt, you've got Carlton, Robin Roberts, you have Darren Dalton, John Kruk. I mean, you have guys that you understand their name still has importance in Philly, and you kind of go, okay, well, why? I mean, it's because they came out and they gave everything they had. It was nothing to lose. It was just go out, you know, and give it everything you have. I think the fans could see how much we loved what we were doing.
Unless you're from a place like Philadelphia, I think it's hard to explain to others outside of it because it's a special thing. What we did was very lucky. We were a special team. But again, the city made us feel that way. And when we showed up every night to play, we played for you guys. You know, we played for the fans. Yes, we played the game because we love and wanted to win, but don't get me wrong, we felt all 257 sellouts.
Flags fly forever. And that 2008 championship created an indelible legacy, both for the core players and those whose stay in Philadelphia was relatively brief.
Doesn't feel like 10 years, but it brings back a lot of exciting times here in Philadelphia for this organization that's got a huge history. So it's really cool to be, a small part of that history. Is very, very special, and I'll remember it forever.
It's amazing to think how many people I've met since then and just what they talk about and what they were experiencing during those times and the moments that they were able to enjoy, one of the best summers they've had in their lifetime, and know that I helped that. I was a part of something that created that.
Our personalities and who we had and things like that, I think the fans definitely they liked them. They liked everything about our team. They liked how we played. And the game that we had was a good game. It was the best game in town.
And you wonderful fans are a big reason for this 2008 World Championship. We thank you. We love you.